Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the original Cooking Duels. And I call this the original because I think people might try to copy this. If they do it in the United States, I might try to stop them. But, this is a duel between two people, a split-screen cooking video, basically. So this video is going to cover the host kitchen. And why? Because I've already done a few of these videos, and I have to redo them. It's too bad. It's unfortunate because they were really entertaining. Where, I would be actually learning how to cook some kind of dish from an Asian girl. So, and it was really nice. Actually there were several videos that I made. One was, a few of them were just for testing, and then a few of them were long. And they just, unfortunately, there was, everything wasn't right on the other end, like bad video quality, only once, bad lighting on almost all of them, and bad audio also. So, these ladies that I've been working with are going to try to address those problems, and we're going to remake a bunch of videos. But before we make the videos, I showed, my kitchen. And there wasn't a single instance where these ladies didn't have questions about my kitchen, because, it's different than a kitchen in China. Now, I've lived in a few countries in Asia, and I've also worked on projects in some countries, and some maybe a couple I just visited for like a week. And there's a big difference between kitchens in North America and or Europe and Asia, because in Asia everybody cooks with two burners. Even I lived with a girl over there, and in China, and we got invited to her uncle's house, who used to be a chef, and he would make these 10, 12, 15 course meals, a pretty long coffee table, maybe 5 feet long, just covered with all kinds of dishes. And he used to just take pride in that. It's like, who can spend the most money making dinner, So, but everything's done with two burners, so it takes a long time. You have to just keep things warm. And, that's crazy. I just don't understand the concept. Everything in, every kitchen in China I've ever seen has two burners. And I've seen a lot because I spent, a long time over there hopping around from Airbnb to Airbnb. And they're all like that. Everything's two burners. So there were no cases where these ladies didn't have questions about the kitchen. So I thought I'd put the video together for them, just to explain everything. And, maybe North Americans don't need an explanation. But anyways, this is just a tour of the host kitchen. So a little bit here, I go into more detail about why I named this Cooking Duels instead of duos or duets. So if you look at a word, if you don't know what a word, even today I run into words in the English language, I don't know what they are. It's like, what is this word? I never heard it before. I'm an engineer and a business consultant too, and I just maybe my vocabulary is limited. I don't read novels and stuff like that. I read, owner's manuals and technical documents. I don't read a novel, and I don't have to look up words very often. So, maybe my vocabulary is not as big as somebody who reads novels, like 5 a week. So if you look up a word and just say, duo in meaning, Google will find some dictionaries that define it. And I always ignore Oxford because that's the British dictionary. And, there's not that many words that are different. It's amazing, one language, and, there's just very few differences between British English and American English. But, I went with Merriam-Webster here. And if you scroll down, after you look up the word duo and say definition, you'll scroll down and down and down and down and down. Way down in the, pages below, you'll see the English language learner's definition of duo. So this is something that at least Merriam-Webster, maybe it's nationwide, maybe it's got something to do with American standards, and that they've, decided that all English language learners are going to do this, or maybe this is just a Merriam-Webster thing. Maybe it's being done globally. Maybe Oxford does it too. So this is the definition of duo that they want you to learn. Two people who perform together are usually seen together or are associated with each other. So if you're going to do a video call with somebody, it's not really a duo because it might be the first time you talk to them. So you're not usually seen together or associated with each other. And we're not performing together. So roll out duo. And then a duet is music related. So, it could be two musicians or two singers. You have a male and a female singer, that's a duet. Or if you have a cello or a bass with a violin, that's a duet. But it's music related. Then duel is, one meaning here is a fight between two people, which is kind of archaic. If you think of the duel as the Old West, or where people draw guns on each other, or way before then when you take 20 paces and turn around and shoot at each other. That's kind of archaic, and the real definition here is two people who compete with each other. So that's why I went with duel for the name of the channel. So this is going to be me, or maybe occasionally somebody else. We might have a bunch of guests because I can put more videos up. I could maybe put up one video a week because of the time it takes to gather ingredients and stuff like that. But I do have some people that we're interested in this, so maybe we'll have a guy and a girl. It's usually going to be a guy and a girl, but maybe a girl and a girl. So it's going to be me, starting out with me in the USA, and me and some ladies in Asia. So I've spent a lot of time in Asia, so I have a lot of contacts there, and I don't have too many male contacts, and there's reasons for that. Business reasons. Sometimes males tend to be, at least in China, they're not really aggressive, but I don't trust them as much. If I want to talk about some kind of business thing and I'm afraid they're going to steal an idea, I'm not talking about a cooking duel video, but something business related, I'd rather discuss it with a lady than a guy. And so that's one reason. Another reason, I'm a guy, and I like ladies. So this is going to start out in Asia, and I've already done some videos with China and Thailand, and a girl in Japan also. So this is going to be me with some learning how to cook a dish from another lady. And I already know a lot of Thai dishes because I follow a Thai. You'll see that later on in the video, or in another video where I follow Pailin's Hot Thai Kitchen, and that's how I started cooking Thai food. And I've just known a lot of Chinese ladies, so I cook Chinese food. But it's going to be me and learning how to cook a dish from my teacher, who will be an entertaining lady. So this is going to require a couple of phone calls or video calls or whatever, where I say, okay, let's pick out a dish that you like a lot. And also, we want to get some kind of mainstream dish. It's not something like, give me a dish that your grandmother used to make that nobody else in the world has ever made. Let's start with mainstream things that you might find in a restaurant. And that way you'll know how to cook something that is a dish in a restaurant. And we'll go over that later. But, as far as the criteria for picking out what we're going to cook, there's some criteria. It has to be somewhat popular of a dish. And, ahead of time, maybe 10 days ahead of time, maybe a week ahead of time, we'll go over the ingredients and try to get everything, even brand names like a particular fish sauce or maybe a particular Thai curry, just to make sure, if the other person has a particular brand and I can find it in the U.S., and you can find a lot of things in the U.S. now. And we have, anybody living in a pretty large metro area will have Asian markets or Chinese markets or Thai market or something like that. And that's true in my area, but it's just easier sometimes to just order something off of eBay or something off of some other site, Amazon. And, if it's stocked in the U.S., you should get it within a week. And that way you'll have the exact name brand and everything. You don't have to worry about going to different stores and driving all around town to try to find an ingredient. And as far as pots and pans and woks and stuff, if you're a viewer that wants to try to make these dishes, and I hope people do, you might not have everything. I'm pretty well set on a lot of stuff that I have. Rice cooker and, noodle makers and stuff like that. But we'll go over everything that we need ahead of time in the process, so I make sure I have that all of the stuff, all of the kitchen, kitchen appliances and stuff that I need. So these are some pics of the kitchen. Now, first of all, compared to Asia, it's a big kitchen. And the reason that it's big is we actually had it made. We had the standard kitchen made larger when I was married when we had this house built, and we wanted our family room, which is if you look at the upper left picture, it would be the room to the left. We wanted it to be 2 stories, and we nuked a bedroom. We nuked 2 bedrooms because we just didn't need that many bedrooms. Just a couple spare bedrooms does the trick. Actually, one would have probably done the trick. We've never had people staying in both spare bedrooms. And then the master suite is right above the kitchen. So when we, wanted to nuke it and have a 2-story family room, we had a problem because the walls didn't line up. So we had to do this on both sides of the family room, is line up the upstairs walls with the bottom wall, so you have one continuous wall on your 2-story, 2.5-story room. So that meant, either making the master suite, which is right above the kitchen, either making it narrower. And the issue there is the closets are on both sides of the hallway that connect the master bedroom to the master bathroom. So, if you made it narrower, that means the closets would be smaller, and that's not a good idea. Closets keep getting bigger and bigger in houses. You don't want to make one smaller. So we decided to make the kitchen like 6 feet wider, or maybe a little bit more than 6 feet wider. So that's why we ended up with a pretty good sized kitchen. So this shows the areas that I get asked about the most. So on the upper right picture, there's a wine border, a vinyl wine border going across the counter. And that's an area that, I was thinking about tiling, and I thought, well, don't really need to tile it because it's, the cooktop is on the island and it's not going to get messy back there. So I just went with some vinyl wallpaper. And those are wine bottles, and they're wine bottles from Napa and maybe some from Sonoma too. Joseph Phelps is, one of those bottles, one of my favorite wines. So anyways, that's what that is. It's not wine bottles. It's just, a vinyl wall covering, a vinyl runner that takes up the space between the cabinets and the counter. And then on the upper left picture, the border going around the top, those are just grapes because this kitchen is done in kind of a wine theme. And then there's by the dinette area, there's like a window, but it's, it's actually a picture frame that I made that kind of looks like a window. And then there's a funky looking chair rail. And then the main thing I get questions about is the island and the cooktop and the downdraft cooktop. So this is a quartz cooktop, and it has 4 burners where everything in Asia is 2 burners, and it's a downdraft. Which, people wonder, is a downdraft any good? Yeah, they are. Actually, if you put a pot of water on and say you're boiling eggs or something like that, and you just turn on the downdraft, the fan on, high, you can turn the lights off in the kitchen and shine a flashlight across it, and you can see that, this downdraft fan, the exhaust is picking up everything. I think it does a better job than a range hood, because sometimes a range hood, if you just take the lid off of a pot, the smoke or steam or whatever, or combination of smoke and steam can just go everywhere. And then, the range hood gets some of it, but, here it gets everything because it's just powerful and really close to the burners, as opposed to being, a few feet on top, or maybe 4 feet or 5 feet on top of a range that's, in your cabinets. So these are what I get the most questions about. And there's things, here that I've changed. I've had 3 different types of lighting in my kitchen. Like, I couldn't decide what I wanted. And this is the first set that you see in these pictures. So this is the wine border that I get asked out, about, and you can see a close up here. I've got some more appliances that I had when there weren't any there for a while. So, you have a blender and a KitchenAid mixer and a salad chopper thing. And then, a coffee maker. And now I have a K-cup maker and a small toaster oven. So, I knew that there were going to be appliances on the kitchen counter, and I knew they were going to cover up the backsplash area. And, that's basically, I was going to put tile there, and I found some tile that I really liked, ceramic tile. But then I thought it's a waste putting it there if there's going to be all these appliances in front of it. So I just went with this wine border. So this is another question that they ask is, what kind of window do I have back there? What is that? It doesn't look like a normal picture frame, and it doesn't. So the middle picture on the top is Santoku, which is a winery in Napa. And it's really, every time I go to Napa, and I work in California a lot, in Silicon Valley, and I'll go to Napa every so often. Like every time I'm there, usually every year I'm there. So Santoku is one of my favorite places because they have these spectacular lunches. They have a beef tip sandwich, which is basically filet mignon grilled out on a grill and put in a Kaiser roll. It's really good. So I always stop there for lunch and have that. And this is what the winery looks like. So I decided to, make a picture frame and make it look like Santoku. So on the upper right is where I cut out a plywood frame, and then I covered it with these MDF blocks that I cut out. And I hit them with that stone paint, stone fleck paint, and when you paint something with that, it looks like a stone. I've used that for a bunch of things, and, it really does look like a rock or a stone or some sort. And then I used real grout because it looks like real grout. And then I wound up with a picture frame on the bottom right, which is, I slammed in a picture of some winery in Napa, not necessarily Santoku. I think that's pretty far away from most places. It might be way up north. But anyways, I put that picture in and hung it up on the wall just to remind me of California and Napa. And then this thing is a chair rail. So for some reason, I didn't, you notice a lot of things that your builder doesn't do, like, things that you would have wanted, like put extra light switches in the garage and outlets near the garage doors. Something I had to do later. You learn a lot of things when you have a house built because, you wish you would have asked for this or that. So this was a dinette area, and they didn't put a chair rail in. And that's kind of weird. So I didn't want to be, backing up against the wall with these, iron chairs, steel chairs. So I decided to build a chair rail, and I started actually buying these ceramic tiles for behind, for where I put the wine border in, for in between the cabinets. And then I decided they looked too good to put there. So they are ceramic wine labels, and they're real looking. They're like photographs, and I think they screen print them on these tiles, and then they put clear on the top, and then they fire them in a kiln. These aren't decals or anything like that. These are, fired on to the tiles. So you can see in the top 4 tiles there, the one of the Rothschilds, which one is Mouton Rothschild. So that's one of the, French first growth wines, if you're into French wines. And I bought 4 of those, and then I bought, some German wines, and then the rest are all Napa. So I just made this chair rail with, and I have a pretty big woodworking shop in the basement now. It's 750 square feet, and it's just, a hobby. So I made this chair rail with oak blocks, and the oak blocks stick out further than the ceramic. So if you back the chair up against it, you'd probably hit the oak and you wouldn't crack the ceramic. So anyways, it's a pretty high chair rail. It's maybe, I don't know, 5 inches high, a lot higher than normal. But that's the point of that. And then wine barrels, some guy was selling this stuff on eBay. He just cuts these wine barrels up and sells them. You know, he cuts the ends of them off and then he cuts them in half, you know, or maybe, yeah, in half. And then I, you know, put wine grapes on these. Someday I'll have to have some lady friend arrange the grapes better, but, you know, I just put grapes on them because they needed something. And then these are paintings. The upper left has a wine head, and I didn't paint it because it's kind of supposed to be something that's just there, not drawing too much attention. But that's, you know, like I think, what is it, Bacchus or something like that. There's a Greek god of wine, there's a Roman god of wine, and one of them's a guy. Apparently the other one's a girl. And then these paintings here are just wine, you know, grape paintings that you can buy on eBay. You know, the small ones are a couple dollars. The big, you can buy really big paintings from China that are actual oil paintings on canvas, and you know they cost just, you know, under $10. And then on the right, that's a little bit more pricey. This is a Emily Zasada. She's a artist out of New York City, and she was famous for doing these. Is famous, or I don't know what she's doing now, but she does these. She started doing these still life pictures, and she was really well known for, you know, these amazing still life shots. And she did a lot of wine bottles and wine glasses for a while. She was on that gig maybe a couple years. And this is the first painting that she did where you can actually look down into a wine glass, so you get that extra reflection, you know, of the wine. And I liked it, so I had to buy it. So it was considerably more expensive, and that's on the, you won't see that too often because that's near the door to go out to the garage. And here there's some wine fridges in the back. I used to have white wine and red wine in there, and I kind of, you know, I don't buy white wine that often. When I do, I put it in a real fridge. So these are, you know, 2 wine fridges of red wine, mostly from Napa, almost all from Napa. And then these are pots and pans. On the right, I just took this picture to send to my a lady friend a few years ago. And this is Calphalon stuff in the back, which I think is good enough. I like it a lot. It's really heavy duty and it lasts forever. And in the front is just, I don't know why I just didn't take a picture of the Calphalon stuff I have. This is older stuff, Tefal stuff, French stuff. And on the left there's a block that I keep on the island, a block of knives on the bottom right. And those are not name brand knives, but they're really good, real high carbon steel, and they sharpen really nice. And on the top left, that's some knives I keep in a drawer. And those are Chicago Cutlery forged, and then there's some more Calphalon, like a barbecue set, and then some, just, you know, you just collect random knives. I just took this picture to show this girl, like the knife, the black one on the lower left is, you know, was sold as a sushi knife, and I bought it, and it is great for, you know, carving up fish. It's not what the Japanese use to carve up sushi, but it works really good. So that's what I use when I'm cutting sushi. Then I started getting into this stuff, and I'm still playing around with it, so I might do a video on it later. These are some Japanese knives, and instead of getting the set, there's a set on the lower right here that's up on Amazon. And, you know, that was priced at about like $149 for most of 2021. And then getting close to the end of the year, it shot up to $199. So I passed on it. Plus, if I bought that, I think I only would get 2 knives that I really wanted if I bought that set. So I decided to buy them individually. And some of these are 2.0, and some of them are, what is that? It's all something, I don't know. And all-win houseware. So these are, I think they're Chinese. Not, oh, it says Japanese steel, Damascus. So I bought some that are Damascus just to be cool. And it says Damascus, 67 layers is what it says on that top left knife. And that just means that, when you're forging a knife and you start pounding it out, then you fold it over and you pound it out again and you do it. That's 67 layers there. So you get this really swirly design, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I bought my first 2 Japanese knives with in that design. And then a third one, the one on the lower left, in the left picture, the lower left picture, it's the left knife. So anyways, what I wound up getting so far, and I'm not sure if I'm going to buy any more of these, is there's a 6-inch fish knife, which I didn't find in the kitchen areas. That's actually got the same handle, which is a Panko wood handle. And what does 2O call it? Panko wood handle Fiery series. So they call it, all of these knives have that same handle as the knives on the right. But they're not a set. They're things I bought individually, but they all have that Panko wood handle on it. And a lot of other manufacturers use the same handle. So the one on the left is actually, wasn't in the kitchen knife section. It was in the hunting section. So it is a fish knife. And, it's not made for Japanese, the way when you think of Japanese people cutting fish, it's usually, like a 400-pound tuna and they're slicing it up. This is made for, if you're lucky enough to get out on the Great Lakes and catch some walleye and you want to make some nice fillets, then you would use a knife that looks like this. Pretty thin knife. It doesn't have to be Damascus. And I'm not real crazy about Damascus. I'll go over this later, but if you have a knife, your knife's all clean, and then you get a big thumbprint on one, you want to wipe it off before you put it away, you're going to be in for a surprise with Damascus, because you got to wipe off your thumbprint with some kind of a cloth, a terry cloth, or a microfiber cloth. It's going to stick to that Damascus stuff. Those little layers are, there's some, relief to them, those little layers, and they'll catch your cloth. So that's why I'm not real crazy about them. You'd have to wash them and then wipe them dry with a regular dish towel, and then, it's just weird to handle to wash these all the time. So I have 3 Damascus knives now, and I'm probably not going to buy any more. So it took me a while to find this video on the left. I've been subscribed to this guy for a long time, but I still couldn't find him, and I couldn't remember his name. So it's Chef Panko, and this guy is a Japanese chef and a French chef. So he is, goes both worlds there between Western and Japanese knives. And he talks very intelligently about these knives. And, while searching for his video, I started watching maybe the first 30 seconds of a bunch of other videos. And, there's so many people on YouTube that they just have to make a YouTube video without knowing anything about the subject matter. So, it's not like I'm an expert. I'm learning, but I like to learn from people who know what they're talking about, instead of learning from somebody that's just talking out the wrong end. So these are he's talking about how to choose a Santoku knife. So first of all, Santoku means 3 virtues, and the 3 virtues are it's just basically 3 uses: cutting meat, cutting fish, and cutting vegetables. So And another thing about Santoku, it doesn't go back very far in Japanese history, because it's got Western influence. And I've heard people say just, American influence. And I've tried to figure out, what date they came around, but, somewhere in the last 50 years. And World War II, Japan was occupied by the United States, and that's like the oldest date that I've seen, is back in the, late 40s and 50s. But it didn't start getting popular until maybe the last 20 years, and it's probably the most popular Japanese knife, even though it's not really a Japanese knife, for a bunch of reasons. One is, it was modeled after it's basically a Japanized, I don't know how you would say Japaneseized, doesn't sound like a word to me. But it's kind of Americanized Japanese knife, or the other way around. It doesn't matter. It's got influences of both, Western knives and Japanese knives. So it's, thicker, higher, and it's, the three virtues are cutting, meat, fish, and vegetables. So for meat, it's kind of shaped like a, butcher knife, where it's curved up at the tip, and then it's flat, and about the last 1/3 of the knife is pretty flat, so you can chop easy with it. You can chop something big like an onion, or a head of lettuce or something like that. Chopping carrots, it probably wouldn't matter what kind of knife you're using, whether you're using a butcher knife or a Japanese knife, because carrots are so small they're only hitting a part of the blade. So this guy's holding 3 knives here that are all Western style Santoku knives, and then on the right, the lower picture on the right, where the knife on the right is a wooden handled one. So this is traditional Japanese knife. They're all made like this. They have the end of the blade that's called a tang. It goes almost all the way to the back of the knife, but that's not as durable as the Western style. So one of the things you do when you're restoring a Japanese knife after it's been in service for a while, like in a home for a couple decades, or in a restaurant for, I don't know, years, is replace the handle, because they're just not that durable. They're going to start getting loose and stuff like that. They're just not that durable, and they're wooden. So he said he says this in this video, the only reason to buy a Japanese knife with a handle like this is just to be traditional. There's no practical reason for it. So, this guy's actually, pretty critical of, some of the real Japanese knives, and he recommends getting the Western style. So in his other hand is the Western style, and that's the same as the 3 that he's holding here. The one in the back, Graffinity, I had to look it up, it's Swiss. The global one is Japanese, and the one in the front is Germany, and I have no idea what that brand is. I'm kind of fluent in German, but that doesn't make much sense to me. And then my knife is in the upper right, and it's Japanese. So, and these are, forged knives. So sometimes they're forged. So I started talking about forged, and then I re-recorded this page to put a couple of pictures on the next page. So I'm not an expert on forging either. I know that, I don't even watch these forging shows, like, Forged in Fire or something like that. So I don't know as much as the average person does about forging. But I do know that, in making swords in, ancient time, where, maybe a Roman sword or something like that, they were forged. The reason they were forged is if you made a sword out of the hardest metal, high carbon content, it's very, very sharp, and it can break real easy. You don't want a sword that breaks. So you use the middle layer, as a really, really hard metal, and then you put some softer metals on the outside. And, they didn't have stainless steel back then. But, today we would add stainless steel to the side of it. And, that way you have a really hard piece of metal in the middle that's going to be the actual edge of the knife. And to keep it from breaking, you put other types of metal on the outside. But I don't understand this Damascus stuff at all. Why would you do 67 layers? It's just like, because we can. I think that's the reason, is because we can. So I looked up, I watched a bunch of videos on this Damascus stuff. And, if you look at the knife on the bottom right, it's got a definite pattern. And the way you make that pattern, it has to do with the way you stack these pieces of metal. So metal has a grain going to it, and when you take all your pieces of metal that you want to forge together and crisscross the grains and stuff, you can get a pattern like this. And I didn't get the links of the videos. I just remember watching them, where they make these really wild Damascus patterns. So mine is the top knife, and it's like a random pattern. It's by accident. And these other two are made to look like this, like a feathery pattern, like the one on the left, and then whatever you call the one on the right. But the reason that before I heard of Damascus, what I thought a forged knife would be is like a forged, old time swords, like the Roman swords, where if you make it really high carbon, it can break, but it also can slice through other swords. So the way you make it durable is to add like 3 layers at least, or maybe 5, with the middle one being the hardest. But I have no idea why you would do 67 layers. Didn't look into that. So if you're wondering, about this Damascus stuff, you can buy all kinds of fancy stuff. I don't know whether it makes any difference, it's the knife on the bottom right looks cool, but does it cut any better than the one I have? Probably not. So anyways, Damascus is just the way I look at it, it's just a personal, do I like the way it looks? So mine looks random. It's okay with me. So these are the cleavers that I have, and the one on the right is a curved cleaver. It's one of the 2E knives with a pocket wood handle. There were two knives that I wanted that would have been in that set, but I decided not to buy the set. I bought them individually. So 2 of them are 2E. And this one, I'm not sure I'm going to have to watch some more videos on this, because what do you do with a curved cleaver? I've used it a few times, and it's like a cleaver that you don't use in a cleaver action, because cleavers are usually straight. The one on the left is just, straight all the way, from front to back. So you really do use it in a chopping motion. And the one on the left is the one in the middle on the left picture. And it's really, really heavy. I've had a couple girls pick up that cleaver. I go, no, you don't want to use that. It's too big for you. 100-pound, 95-pound girls or 85-pound girls. That's too much knife for them. So, I let them use the one in the middle. Now I have the one on the right. I haven't really figured out what to do with that. I'm going to have to watch some more videos and see how the Japanese use a curve-handled cleaver, because it just doesn't make sense unless you're, I don't know, chopping through bone, and the bone's not flat, and I don't know. I just I don't understand the purpose of it yet, but I will. So sharpening. I'm not going to spend much time talking about sharpening. On the right, you have some guys. It looks like maybe a girl. Sharpening knives, and they're using these, sharpening stones, or whetstones, whatever you want to call them. And, the 3 pictures on the top, they're probably dual grits, where you can flip them over and get, like a 800 grit and maybe a 400 and 800, or maybe a 800 and a 1600 grit. And then the ones on the bottom, there's one on the right that has 4 different grits. So, and then on the left, these are, honing steels or honing rods. They have different names depending on where you look for them. So in the top left picture, they call that a honing steel, which is what it's called a lot of times. And then a honing steel, and then we have a diamond knife blade sharpener, which it's not really a sharpener. Then the one on the middle and the bottom says, this is the 2.0 with the pocket wood handle. And it says that it's a daily sharpening maintenance, and that's the most accurate thing, because you're not really sharpening a blade. When you're using a blade to chop with, and you're chopping on wood, you dull the blade by either smashing the end of it a little bit, or curling it over, or something, flattening the blade out. What it needs is straightened on the end. So that's what they mean by daily maintenance, daily sharpening maintenance. You're just using this rod to deburr the knife. In the woodworking world, there's something called a scraper, where you actually intentionally put a burr on the edge of a scraper, and you can use it like a little plane. It'll get rid of wood almost like a hand plane. So, and you actually use a burring tool to put a burr on it. But with a kitchen knife, you want to take the burr out, and that's what these rods are for. It's just swipe, 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 and that deburrs the end of the blade and straightens it out if it was curled, and it remains sharp for a little while longer. then I thought that I would throw this in because I have these pictures. So this, I'm a consultant by trade, and in business and engineering, I'm not a woodworker, professional woodworker, but I do have a pretty nice woodworking shop in the basement. It's 750 square feet, and I have a woodworking group that I put together, a meetup group. And this is in the newer room of the shop, which is the finish assembly room. The machine room tends to not have a lot of space to do things. It has plenty of space around each tool, but it's each machine, but it's not, I have classes and stuff in the other room. So this is one thing we did once on sharpening, where unfortunately I don't have there were about 40 people in the shop for this one, but for some reason there's only maybe 10 or 12 people in the pictures. I think some people were behind me, and I think we're kind of taking a break there. But this is a sharpening class where we had for certain people. There were 4 people that brought 4 different machines to demonstrate the sharpening capability, and then there was me. I did the thing on the left, which is manual sharpening. So this is what a woodworker considers to be a sharp blade. On the upper left picture, you have a mirror finish. So it's sharpened. These are chisels that are sharpened down to like 8,000 grit. So that's what a woodworker considers a sharp blade to look like. So chefs, they should feel the same. It should look like that. And they get it that way by sharpening on stones. And I'm using actually a pressure backed sandpaper. The yellow is I think 250 grit or 220 grit, and then the red is 400. Then you get into the higher 800, 1,000, and then there's another surface that has the up to 8,000. So this is a picture I put up there. I guess I'm just not cool enough to have pots hanging from the ceiling. I really don't understand the concept. I kind of wanted to put a pot hanger up on my ceiling because they're kind of cool, but I keep my pots, in my woks on the top, and the Lazy Susan, with layers of, paper towels in between them so they don't scratch each other. But the issue with me putting a rack up, like most real chefs that have a kitchen, is because it would mess up the lighting. Not only I'm not worried about the downdraft so much because the high volume on the fan is really, really high, so nothing escapes it. You can sit there and watch it. If you're boiling eggs or something, you watch the steam just get sucked down into the downdraft fan, and it doesn't go up on the ceiling. Actually, I think downdraft is actually better for capturing all of the greasy smoke and stuff that comes out of your pans than an overhead one. Because they can stuff can rise and go left and right of the overhead one, but when you have a downdraft, it just sucks everything straight down. So anyways, the problem with my kitchen is if I put a pot hanger up there, it would interfere with the lighting, and it would give me all kinds of funky shadows on my cooking surface. So I haven't done it yet. And then this is just something funny. This is like a year ago. I had a guest in my house, and we were cooking dinner. We were cooking a Chinese dinner, and then I went upstairs to take a shower. So, and then she texted me, where's your chopsticks? And I replaced her name with Chinese girl on here. But I said, I like to cook Asian food. You'll find that out. Thai food especially. I don't have a Thai drawer though. So anyways, I said the cheap ones are in the Chinese drawer and the good ones are in the Japanese drawer. And she sent me some knives. So, and I said, sorry, that's the way it is. So I showed her these drawers before because, I don't keep chopsticks in the utensil drawer, where I guess that would make sense. But, I have a couple drawers to keep stuff in. So here you can see on the left is the Chinese drawer. I have since moved the noodle makers out to another cabinet. I have plenty of cabinet space, especially for a guy. and there's more Chinese stuff in there now. So the left drawer is Chinese and the right drawer is Japanese. You can see the, sushi rolls and, soup bowls in the back with spoons and, little things for your wasabi sauce and stuff like that. So, I make sushi sometimes too, and I don't get too much variety in the fish. So what do we have here? Rice cooker and some cutting boards. So the rice cooker, I was in Osaka airport once on the way home, and usually, even though it's an international flight, I only take a carry-on because I leave most of my stuff in the hotel. My job is, was exclusive travel, which means get on an airplane every Monday morning to go to work. Except for when you're overseas, then you maybe come home twice a month and you have an extended weekend, maybe 4 or 5 days. But I was taking a carry-on, which I usually do every week, and then I was also carrying a big bag, so I didn't want to deal with a rice cooker. I wasn't carrying a big bag. I checked the big bag. But when I got back home, I didn't want to deal with a rice cooker and a big bag and a carry-on, so I decided to pass on it. But when I got to the gate, this was a big jumbo jet international flight, and I was flying first class because I fly every week. So the first class section had a square seating area where the seats were arranged in a square and everybody's facing each other. And when I got to the gate, I could see that, there were at least 15 people in first class that had this box sitting at their feet from the duty-free store. So I thought, must have been a pretty good deal. So these are all Japanese people. Some are Japanese Americans returning home, and some are, Japanese people visiting, the United States, and, they might be buying a rice cooker as a gift. So anyways, this is a Zozurushi, and I snapped some pictures of the rice cooker that they had, and then when I got home, I ordered it on eBay, and I think I probably got a better deal on it anyway, much better deal. So this is Zozurushi is like the god of rice cookers in Japan. And, they make a lot of appliances, and it's just, it'd be like KitchenAid, a really good brand in the United States. So it's real popular. And, I've had it for 12 years, and I didn't use it too much when I first got it, but I've been using it, ever since. And it's never skipped a beat. It still looks brand new. If you can tolerate it playing, Mary Had a Little Lamb every time you turn it on. And down on the right, I have some cutting boards. So these are maple, which should be what your cutting boards are. Either that or a lot of them are teak now, or some of them are teak. Teak is a little more porous, but it's weatherproof basically. But most cutting boards now that, if you're buying them from China, they're made out of bamboo, which is another good thing to have a cutting board made out of. But I still don't. Now these were new here when I took this picture, but they're not anymore. And they look a little used, but I still follow the same thing. When I don't cut meat on wooden cutting boards, and it's just crazy to do that. I see so many people doing it, even professional chefs, and I don't know what they do to clean their cutting boards. I mean, you really need to bleach them and then put some, cooking oil, or not cooking oil, put some cutting board oil on them, like Martin's. Martin's makes a cutting board oil. It's non-toxic that seals the wood again. So, but wood, no matter what it is, I work mostly with oak in my basement woodworking shop, but I do have some maple. So if you take a slice of this, and it doesn't even have to be, razor thin slice, maybe a 1/16 of an inch, and you hold it up to your lights, you'll see wood is very porous. It doesn't matter what the wood is, it's very porous, and that wood will soak up the blood that's in the meats, and it's just not very hygienic. So instead of doing that, I cut meat on the plastic, on the, I don't know if this is polyethylene or polystyrene or whatever, but I cut on the plastic, and I still treat those with a little bit of bleach and then wash them down real good with a brush. So that's the guideline I still follow is, that I don't cut meat on wooden boards. Too much maintenance. So I'm going to make a host kitchen too, where I go over things in a little bit more detail. I've been cooking Thai food now for maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. So I always keep, a variety of curries around. You can buy those by the jar. You can buy them by the sealed envelopes, which is something that Pylin has recommended lately. You can just open up an envelope. They have a really long shelf life. Instead of keeping jars of curry in the refrigerator, you can just keep some in your pantry, and use them as you need them. There's enough in an envelope for one meal. So I'll go over stuff like that and some of the spices that you need, and I'll also go over the noodle makers and the dough presses and stuff like that. So I'll put together something else, maybe, as the next video. Okay, that's all I have. I appreciate your time.